So let me talk to you about a Jewish issue for a moment. And I'm sure you feel similarly, but I want to hear how you express it. We're a strange people, the Jews. I think there are a lot of our fellow Jews who are not healthy. There is no group that has as many people who actively work against its interests as Jews do. By the way, the second group is Americans. And I think there are commonalities. There's a tremendous number of commonalities there. I mean, you don't have many Uruguayans working against Uruguay. As you know, I debated in Oxford on Thanksgiving. I debated an expatriate Israeli, Avi Shleim, whose basic thesis is that Israel was a terror state, Israel was at fault, Hamas is the victim, Israel was the instigator. His PhD student said, she was the other debater on that side, said that Israel does to the Palestinians what the Nazis did to the Jews. This was said at Oxford. And this was voted as the correct position by the Oxford students at the Oxford Union. And so you have this Israeli saying this, and today I was called up by Haaretz. I was mentioning this to you, but I want you to know why, because I want this is a very important little, if you will, anecdote. I am going to Israel at the end of this month with a man named David Lane, who's a Christian, evangelical Christian, who has been taking evangelicals to Israel, and in fact, in November, took them, along with Mike Huckabee, to Auschwitz. He's so pro-Jewish and pro-Israel that he takes pastors to Auschwitz and to Israel. And I was on the latter part of that trip in London, and I will be going to Israel with them. So Haaretz calls me up today, their New York correspondent. Why are you going? Which is a strange question. Why am I going with evangelicals and with leading Republicans to Israel? Because I'm pro-Israel, which at Haaretz apparently is somewhat of a difficult position to digest. And so I have three witnesses, because it happened while we were driving down to San Diego. And it went on for over a half hour, and we just started arguing with each other. She called to interview me, but she was so angry that I would be with evangelicals and people who think that they have the right position. I said, but so does the New York Times editorial page. They think they have the right position too, and everyone else is wrong. And she said, no, not at all. The New York Times position is that everyone's view is valid. And this is the Haaretz. I have three witnesses living in the car. They were dying. I needed vomit bags in the car. It wasn't an airplane. And so you have to understand, I had to defend myself for going to help Israel, with Christians going to Israel at a time of great tension in Israel. How do you explain this portion of the Jewish people that is more preoccupied with evangelicals' views of salvation than existential threats to Israel?
Look, this is not an easy question. But one point I would make is the Jews were exiled from politics for 2,000 years. And so forgive us for being incompetent at it. And not only that, but in the sense that Jews in the diaspora, I think, developed a politics which too easily conflated the pure business of politics, and I mean that politics in the high sense, the security of the city, with ethics. Now, politics is related to ethics, and there are always ethical considerations in politics, and often political considerations in ethics, but they're not simply twinned. And so there has always been a view, I think among the Jews, that they would rather be ethically pure and dead than ethically compromised and alive. There is too much fascination with Auschwitz. There is too much of a sense that Auschwitz as an expression of utter victimization is almost a high point in Jewish history. You know, I think about this in a more recent context. For a number of years after Israel withdrew from Gaza, withdrew its settlers from Gaza, lo and behold, peace did not instantaneously break out. The Israeli town of Sderot was under constant shell. And Sderot became a kind of a place where tour guides would take, they took Obama, they took visiting politicians, and they would say, well, look, you know, we're being shelled, right? Isn't this terrible? And you know, UJA Federation, you know, to its great credit, would purchase $13 million to buy a state-of-the-art gym behind 4 feet, you know, walls 4 feet thick of nuclear-grade concrete, you know, so kids could play basketball. Oh, see, look, we're being victimized. But Sderot was being treated as an advertisement for Israel, whereas in fact it was a disgrace for Israel. It was a disgrace that Israel could accept that a town, even on the border with Gaza, could be shelled and without a decisive response by a state that had the capacity to carry out that response. The purpose of the state of Israel isn't to showcase Jewish victimization, it's to end Jewish victimization. I see, in a sense, I mean, look, the Jewish story is a very long one and is certainly by no means over. And I see Zionism, or the early, and I believe we are in the early chapters of Zionism, because I believe Israel will be around for a very, very, very long time, in which we are trying to understand again what it means to be political creatures. I mean, imagine if the Promised Land had been, I don't know, the Canary Islands or Barbados, or you know, something like that. You know, the Jews had returned to their historic homelands of Barbados, and you would sit there and fish and argue about whatever. But no, not only were we returned to political life in the 20th century, but we were returned to political life where political choices are acute, where the margin of error is very slender, where you cannot engage, as we do too routinely in the United States, in a kind of politics of vanity. Like to say, I'm for peace. Are you for peace? Dennis, are you for peace? No, I'm against peace. Right? This is sort of the sloganeering that's so common in American politics. And so, ironically, so Jews are thrust back into political life after 2,000 years of exile, and suddenly they discover that their political choices are not between the virtuous option of being pro-peace, pro-ecology, pro-rights of squirrels, et cetera, all of which I'm entirely in favor of. But political choices are actually a constant confrontation of a choice of evil. You know, Bibi Netanyahu wakes up in the morning, and his menu doesn't say, and I see Governor Wilson nodding because he understands this. The menu is, Governor, you may choose virtuousness and righteousness, and in the long course, you know, the good action. Or you may choose to be vile, reptilian, stupid, demagogic, and an object of the fury of the New York Times' editorial page. What would you like to be? Oh, I think I'll be demagogic, right? No, I mean, the choice is, well, if you invade Gaza, for example, to take a recent example, if you invade Gaza and seize the city, you will end Hamas, right? But you will lose 150 soldiers. So the price of bringing an end to this terror will be 150 grieving Israeli parents, or 300 grieving Israeli parents. That's your choice. Then it becomes more complicated. And I think Jews are struggling to understand that the ethics that serves a people in exile, in one way or another, is not the ethics of politics. I think Jews need an education, starting with Aristotle's Politics, in the actual nature of political life. And that's why I keep coming back to this question of philosophy. I think we are philosophically undereducated as Jews and as Americans to understand what it is to be a creature in the political world, and to face choices where you understand that morally it's not easy, but precisely because it's difficult, it means that making the hard choice makes you a better man. Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt faced tough choices. And Harry Truman, by the way, when he dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I admire them more for having those choices and making them, understanding that in doing the right thing, they had to nonetheless become participants in a great deal of suffering.